Hi, so I've been dealing with a couple of problems with regards to my mother-in-law, and I don't understand how to go about it right now. Because honestly, the problem itself is so strange and weird. I really don't think that anybody has ever had to deal with such a thing. I have been with my husband for the past 14 years. We've been married for 12 years and we have a 10-year-old son together. Our son, let's call him Theo, has always been a very funny and lively kid. He's always one for jokes and pranks, and we like that about him. We don't want that to change because I think it's healthy for a boy his age to always go after the laughs. Of course, we try to make sure he's never mean to anyone, and I think that we have been successful in doing that so far. Because whenever he has crossed anybody's boundaries or we feel like he's disrespected someone, we have always made him apologize. And we have taught him that it's not the right thing to do. And right now, my mother-in-law wants us to teach him the same lesson. But I don't think that he's crossing a line here regarding what he's doing, which is basically him calling my mother-in-law by my mom's name. But hear me out, and I think the reason will justify his actions. My mother-in-law, let's call her Patty, has always loved my son's name, Theodore. Of course, I'm using a fake name right now, but she loves his real name, and she has always called him Theo. Part of the reason is that my husband's maternal grandfather, her dad, had Theodore as his middle name. Of course, I didn't know that much after I had given birth and chosen that name for my son, but I don't think that would have changed anything because I really liked this name that I picked for him. For ages, Patty loved this name, but recently, for God knows what reason, she has switched to calling him by her father's first name, which was Gerald. And look, Gerald is a nice name. I understand why she has been emotionally attached to that name because she lost her father when she was very young and she was just in her early 20s, and she's always tried to find some sort of resemblance between her father and her grandson. I thought it was harmless enough because she would only make comments about how Theo looks like her dad sometimes and how he walks like him sometimes, which are not that deep. But now I think it's weird because there is absolutely no reason for her to be calling Theo by some other name which has nothing to do with him. We have tried to get her to stop, but it hasn't worked. Even though we have made it very clear that we are uncomfortable with it. She's said that she only does it because Theo reminds her too much of her father, with his little mannerisms and some resemblance and looks. And I can't comment on the mannerisms, but I can definitely say that he doesn't look like Gerald at all. For the past couple of weeks, though, every time that she has been visiting, this would happen, and we didn't know what to do about it because it was such an awkward place to be in. And since it was a sensitive topic, we didn't want to deal with it badly either because apart from this, neither my husband nor I have ever had any problems with Patty. Besides, last year she also lost her husband, my father-in-law. So we want to be able to be there for her, but she has been making it very difficult for us. And of course, we don't know how to explain this to Theo either, because he keeps asking why his grandma keeps calling him by some other name, and he finds it quite annoying as well. But we don't know what to tell him about it, so we had been brainstorming a way to deal with this without coming off as insensitive or offensive because we didn't want to hurt her, especially when she was in a vulnerable state. However, before we could do anything, it was Theo who decided to take matters into his own hands and started dealing with the issue by referring to Patty by my mom's name. And every time that she would come over and start calling him Jerry or Gerald, he would respond by calling her Nana Mary, which is what he calls my mom. For the first couple of times, she was just confused. But then she started picking up on it, And instead of talking to him about it, she decided to speak to us about it and told us that she thought it was really weird he was calling her by my mother's name. She told us we had to do something about it, and we thought that it was the perfect seg for us to bring up the fact that he was only doing it because he was not comfortable with the fact that she was calling him by the name Gerald, especially when he had never even known his great-grandfather, so naturally it made him a bit annoyed. And he had even spoken to us about it. We thought that the fact that Theo himself was not okay with this would mean something to her, and she would stop calling him Gerald, but instead she defended herself, saying that he was too young to understand what it meant to her. And she started telling us that now it was our responsibility and duty as parents to teach Theo to be more sensitive towards other people's feelings. And she turned the whole thing around on us. We were quite annoyed after that conversation, so we decided to just let things take their own course without getting more involved. And this just kept on happening. Every time she would visit, she would call him Gerald. And Theo would call her Nana Mary. And both of them would be annoyed. And to be honest, my husband and I thought that he was dealing with the situation just fine by himself. Then, recently, the same thing happened at a family dinner a couple of days ago, and Patty finally lost it. She started crying about how Theo did not seem to have any sense of respect or boundaries, how he was totally disrespectful towards her, humiliating her and her emotions by mocking her, and calling her Nana Mary when she was only trying to honor her father by taking note of acknowledging the very noticeable resemblance between him and her grandson. This was after Theo had finally gone to bed, and the only people in the room were the adults, so it was just me and my husband, my parents, and Patty. And the way she was crying made us very uncomfortable, because we did not want to hurt her anymore. But I knew I had to take a stand for myself, my husband, and my son as well. So, even though she was crying, I told her I could understand she felt a certain way about the resemblance that she saw between her father and her grandson. But at the end of the day, Theo did not approve of the fact that he was being referred to by some other name, and she couldn't possibly expect him to acknowledge or honor a relation that he had never even seen. Besides, kids are very particular about these things at their age. And maybe when he's older, he'll be fine with it. But right now, if he doesn't want her to call him by this name, then she should probably refrain. I thought that I had been perfectly respectful. I thought that I had said all the right things and dealt with it in a sensitive way. But instead, she turned on me and she started yelling at me, scolding me about how I was spoiling my son by allowing him to disrespect his elders, especially his own family. And she told me that I needed to do a better job of being a mom because otherwise I was just going to raise a spoiled and insensitive kid. Personally, I thought it was taking things way too far. And I did not like what she said because I didn't think that Theo had said or done anything that offensive. He had only chosen to take a stand for himself, and he was doing it in a funny way. And I was proud of him for not letting anybody have their way with him or his identity. For a child who's just 10 years old, I think whatever he was doing was working. And I did not think anything was disrespectful or humiliating about that. I made that very clear to Patty, and she started arguing with me, telling me that we were being insolent and insensitive. And of course, my husband also got involved, and that evening just ended in a big fight. Then she left, and since then we have not been speaking to one another. I don't have an issue with it, but my parents think that we could have dealt with the situation much better, and we probably should have, given the state that she's in. My mom has told me that Patty is clearly going through a lot, and I need to be a little more considerate of that because right now the only family she has is us. And her calling our son Gerald is not really hurting anyone. It's not like his name is actually going to be changed because of what she's calling him. So the least that we can do is just teach him to be okay with it and not say anything, just to spare his grandma's feelings. I don't think that's fair to him though, because I think Theo likes his name, and I think that he wants people to refer to him by his given name, not what somebody has just arbitrarily decided to call him one day. Besides, he's 10 years old. I don't think that he's old enough to understand these things. And I don't want him to stop taking a stand for himself, just to accommodate everybody else's feelings. If he's not comfortable with something, he's not comfortable with it, period. There are allowances to be made in certain cases, of course. But I don't think that this is one of them. And now, even my parents and I are in disagreement about this. I don't know if I've done the right thing or the wrong thing, but I just know for a fact that I'm choosing to take a stand for myself, my husband, and my son, and I don't see how I'm wrong for that. So that's why I'm here trying to ask for a second opinion from you guys, because I'm very confused about what to do here. It's a strange situation. No doubt about that. And I do feel bad about what's going on. But again, I cannot bring myself to feel like I'm doing anything wrong. So, AITA for not letting my mother-in-law call my son by the wrong name, even if it means a lot to her. Edit. For those of you who are asking, nobody really knew what my husband and I were planning on naming our son until he was born. So no, Patty did not have any hand in naming him. She did not have any involvement at all. We wanted the decision to be completely ours, so we had even told everyone that we did not need any suggestions or whatever from them. And everybody had respected that. We wanted the choice to be completely ours, free of any sort of influence. And Theodore was a name that we had chosen on our own. Of course, again, I feel like I have to specify that it's not his actual name, but for the sake of the post, that will have to do. Whatever we named him, it was our decision entirely. So unlike whatever people are speculating in the comments, Patty did not actually have any involvement there. So you guys can lay your theory to rest. Update 1. Hey, so thank you to everybody who commented on my post. It has given me a lot of clarity on the situation. And yeah, I guess I'm just going to have to deal with the situation the way I have been doing so far, by not dealing with it at all. Because honestly, I don't see any other way to deal with it, because anything else that I try, I'm pretty sure that it's going to end badly. Especially right now when tempers are running high. Since the fight the other night was a pretty bad one, and we have never had such a huge disagreement. Patty and I have mostly always gotten along well, but this was a pretty big fight. I don't know what else to do about it, because if I try to talk to her, I'm pretty sure that she's not going to take it well, at least not right now. So I think I'm just going to wait for her to come to me instead, and that's it. With my parents, it's different, because even though we had not been talking for a couple of days, they called me up a few hours ago and we sorted everything out. They told me that they were from a different generation with different beliefs, and maybe we were from different schools of parenting, but they respected that. They were sorry for whatever they had said, implying that I had been wrong and everything. I guess that's fair enough, because people are entitled to their own opinions. And my parents are from a different generation, so of course their beliefs are going to be different from mine. I told them it was completely fine, and what mattered was the fact that they had acknowledged the fact that I was allowed to have my own perspective, that I was not wrong for feeling this way and for dealing with the situation here in my own way. We sorted everything out. We cleared the air, and now everything's fine between me and my parents, at least. I don't know what's going to happen with Patty, though. Neither does my husband have any idea, because this is the first time she hasn't visited in almost over a week. Honestly, I really do wish that things would go back to normal, because other than what happened recently, Patty has always been a welcome presence in our house. And she's always been very nice to talk to. We like having her around, but this time, I don't know what's going wrong. Personally, I think that she could do with some therapy. I think it would do her a world of good, and it would help us as well. But let's see if she will be open to that option. Update 2. So it's been a couple of weeks since we last spoke to Patty, and after the fight, she had obviously not been in touch with us. We feel bad about whatever happened, but at the same time, it's not like it was our fault entirely. In fact, I don't think that it was our fault at all. So if somebody has to make the first move, it's got to be her. My husband has been contemplating getting in touch with her just to find out how she's doing, because at the end of the day, she is still his mother. And she's old and lives alone, so naturally there is a certain amount of concern, and I agree with him. I do think that he should reach out to her at the very least. So far, to avoid talking to her directly, he has just been asking for updates from Patty's neighbors, who happen to be nice people and do keep an eye on her for us. Nothing seemed to be off. She seems to be following her usual routines. So for now, I think we are in the clear. However, eventually I know for a fact that we are going to have to talk and sort things out, and I'm just hoping that she makes the first move. I hope she comes to that realization first, because thanks to this whole situation, even Theo is quite confused, because this is probably the first time in his life that he hasn't seen Patty in so long, and he's a very smart kid. He seems to pick up on things when they are not going right. And right now he seems to realize that there's something going very wrong with Patty, and he keeps asking us if it is his fault, and it breaks our hearts. He has been very upset. He's even told us that if it makes Patty happy, he will stop calling her Nana Mary, and he will allow her to call him Gerald, even though he doesn't particularly like that because he thinks it makes him sound old. I mean, come on. How can anybody possibly be mad at that kid? He's really the sweetest. I have to say that. And I'm not even praising myself by saying that I raised him to be like that. I'm just saying that he is genuinely a sweet kid. And nobody had to make him like that. He just is like that. I think it's very thoughtful of him. And if not for our sakes, I think Patty should reach back to us and apologize and make everything right again for her grandson's sake at the very least. For now, I don't know what's going to happen though, so I'm just keeping my fingers crossed and hoping for the best. Update 3. Okay, hey everybody. So something very weird happened a couple of days back. And then again today. I went to work, and while I was coming back home a couple of days back, I'm pretty sure I saw Patty's car in the driveway. I thought it was very strange because she knows that nobody's at home during that time of day. I come back home at 5, and around 5:15, my husband picks up our son from my parents' house and comes back home. So for the rest of the day, nobody is really in the house, since my son goes directly to my parents' house after school and waits there to be picked up by my husband, since we are still not comfortable with letting him stay home alone yet. I don't know what she was doing there, and honestly, I thought that I might have been mistaken, but then this happened again today, and it was just very weird. Last time, I hadn't discussed it with my husband because it had totally slipped my mind, but today, when I saw the car again, and when it drove away as soon as I was near the house, I knew for a fact that it had to be, because why else would somebody be waiting outside my house and then drive away as soon as I showed up? There had to be something going wrong, and I decided to speak to my husband about it because this was concerning behavior. I'm not saying she doesn't have the right to come to our house or anything, but to come by when nobody is here and to drive away as soon as somebody comes back? Yeah. Tell me that's not weird. Anyway, I spoke to him about it, and even he agreed that there was something definitely very off about this whole thing. And finally, he decided that he was going to speak to Patty about it. So a couple of hours ago, he decided to make a phone call, and in the beginning, she didn't pick up. So he tried a couple more times, and even then, When she refused to pick up the phone, he decided to text us saying he knew for a fact that she had come by a couple of days back and then driven away. And then she had done the same thing again today as well, and we didn't want to fight with her. So he tried a couple more times, and even then, when she refused to pick up the phone, he decided to text us saying he knew for a fact that she had come by a couple of days back and then driven away, and then she had done the same thing again today as well. And we didn't want to fight with her. We just wanted an explanation and maybe sort things out somehow, if it was possible. So it would be great if she could call us back, and then we would be able to have a proper conversation like adults. I thought that was respectful enough, and I guess she agreed, because a couple of minutes later, Patty called us, and because we did not want Theo to be a part of the conversation, we sent him to his room, and then we finally started talking about the real things. She started off by telling us that the reason she had shown up a couple of days ago and then again today was because she really wanted to talk to us. But as soon as she saw me pull up, she remembered the fight that we had. And then her courage failed her, so twice she had come by to try and sort things out, but then she felt too afraid to talk to us and she felt too embarrassed of herself. So that's why she had decided to leave before even going in to give it a try. That made sense, and she sounded genuinely embarrassed and ashamed of everything that had happened, so we had no reason not to believe her. And we also felt bad about whatever had happened, so we told her that we also wanted to sort things out, and that's why we decided to have another dinner together, and this time it would just be the three of us. For the time being, before we sorted things out, we wanted to keep Theo out of the way, so I decided that he would be spending that day with my parents. And we decided that in 3 days, on Friday, she would be coming over to have dinner with us. And we will finally be talking things out, of course. We could have done the same thing on the phone as well, but I don't think that it would have been the same because I think this needs a discussion in person. After that conversation, I think both my husband and I felt relieved, to say the least, because whatever had happened recently, it had been weighing on us. It had been making us feel guilty, and now we finally have an out. We can talk things through, we can have a discussion, and just put an end to all the drama. And I'm glad that she came to her senses and decided to try, because if she hadn't shown up, maybe we wouldn't have called, and then we would still be in this rut. So yeah, whatever happened. The thing with her showing up and then leaving immediately, that was weird. But I'm glad it happened. And I'm really looking forward to having dinner with her and sorting things out. Because I think I'm done with this whole Cold War situation that we were in. And I'm hoping that we will have good news to share with Theo after that dinner. Because I know that he really misses Patty, and out of all of us, he would probably want things to be sorted out as quickly as possible the most. Of course, this is making me and my husband happy too, because like I said, I've never had any problems with Patty in the past. It's just this particular incident, but I think if we deal with it well enough, we will be able to overcome it, and I'm confident about that. Update 4. Hey, so a couple of hours ago, we finally concluded the dinner that we had been looking forward to, the much-awaited event. And I'm happy to tell you guys that it went pretty well, actually. We were able to sort everything out, at least for the most part, but we still have not been able to convince my mother-in-law to think about therapy. Patty thinks that it's unnecessary, and she's worried about the expenditure of it as well, because her healthcare plan doesn't cover it. We have tried telling her that we are going to cover the cost of that, so she doesn't need to worry about it, but she thinks that it's an unnecessary expenditure, and she doesn't want to be a burden on us. We didn't push it much, though, because we are taking it slow, and we don't want to get her to do too much too fast, especially if she's not ready for it. This is something that is very personal, so it has to happen when she feels like it should happen. We cannot force her to do something that she doesn't want to right now. I mean, wasn't that the whole point of this whole argument or incident or whatever you want to call it? Anyway, she did apologize for whatever had happened and said that she was maybe projecting a lot of her issues onto us and Theo, especially. And Theo was too young to understand what was going on, so he couldn't deal with it sensitively or whatever. And that's completely justified because the way he chose to deal with it was actually pretty hysterical now that she thinks about it. It was nice that she acknowledged the fact that Theo was at least trying to be funny about it and was not being mean or rude. The fact that even at such a young age, his first response to something that doesn't sit well with him is to try and diffuse the situation with humor instead of getting aggressive, that speaks a lot about his nature. And we are proud of him. And Patty agreed that he dealt with the situation a lot better than most people would have. Probably people even older than him. Anyway, it was basically agreed upon mutually that what she did was not really acceptable, and her behavior was kind of problematic. And she acknowledged and apologized for her mistake wholeheartedly. She knew that she had let her personal issues, her internal problems in her own head, get the better of her. And she promised us that she was not going to let it happen again. She said she was going to make sure that she kept a check on her behavior and would not act like this ever again. And we were more than happy to let it all go and forgive and forget, because that's what we wanted. We wanted her to be a part of our family and for everything to go back to how it used to be. And now I think we can start trying to go back to normal. So I am pretty glad that we had this discussion. I think it was an important conversation that needed to be had. And now we have one complete family again, and I think Theo is going to be pretty happy about it. We have planned another family dinner with everybody, including my parents and Theo, and that's going to happen in a couple more days, so I'm really looking forward to it. Because Patty is going to show up and it's going to be a surprise for Theo, because he hasn't seen her for a pretty long time. I'm happy now, since all the problems have been sorted out. Update 5. Hey, so it's been a couple of days and today we finally had the dinner party with everybody else, and this time everything went smoothly. It was a bit awkward in the beginning, but then the ice melted as soon as Theo and Patty saw each other, and he was happier than ever to go play with her. He even told her she could call him Gerald if that made her happy, but he would prefer to be called Jerry if it really meant that much to him, because he didn't want to sound like he was an old man, and Gerald sounded like an old man's name. He then went on to do a little bit of pretending to be like an old guy, and then got a lot of laughs, and Patty was the one laughing the loudest, so I would say that things have pretty much gone back to normal. We had a great evening, and most importantly, my husband and Theo were the happiest at the end of the evening, so I think I would call it a great success. Thank you so much to everybody who read my posts and stayed updated. Thank you for all the comments and support. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.